Some people decide that they want a family, and then they find out what it's actually going to take to build one. The appointments, the waiting, the money, the time, the forms, the energy. The practitioners who don't quite know what to do with them or the family they're trying to build. The systems that were built with someone else in mind. And underneath all of that, the dream that they're carrying, that they are trying to protect, that they're trying to make real in a world that has, decided that they may not deserve it for all of the ways that the world actually shows up or doesn't, right? Like that is a crushing reality to carry, to move through. And it's one that I know personally, and one that I think is so important that we talk about, because most people don't realize what it actually costs and what it looks like, what it feels like when you finally have someone who shows up and sees you, all of you, and says, I've got you from here all the way through. This is what we're cracking open today in our conversation, or our catalyst conversation for relationship revolution. So welcome, my friends, to the relationship revolution. Here, we challenge the unquestioned assumptions about love, life, and leadership, disrupt the patterns that have been keeping you stuck, and reveal the truths that no one has told you. Here, we activate new ways of leading your relationships, consciously, courageously, differently, dare I say, better, so that you can have the relationships, the life, the love that most people only dream of. I'm so glad that you're here. Are you ready? Let's get into it. So, if you're listening to this live, you're listening to it in the month of June 2026. And in this house, June means Pride Month. And in this podcast, June means Proud Love. Every year, we dedicate this month to centering Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus voices, stories, and truths. Not as a gesture, not as a token, as an intentional act of expanding what we all understand about love, who gets to have it, what it costs to fight for, and what every single one of us can learn when we listen to the people who have had to live the most out loud. This is episode 2 of our Proud Love series. And in this conversation, let me back up. This conversation is one that I feel very personally, because today we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime, something that I have lived myself. It's not just the joy of queer family creation. It is the full truth of it, the weight of it, and the kind of support that can make all the difference. But before I get further in the conversation, let me take a moment and introduce myself for those of you who are new to me or this work. My name is Dr. Jeni. I am an award-winning relationship mentor, speaker, author, and intuitive guide, and I am a member of the queer community and a relationship revolutionary. My mission is to revolutionize how we think about and go about our relationships, and to redefine what it means to love, so that we may all experience the true power and possibilities that our relationship has to offer. Because nothing, truly nothing, impacts the quality of our lives than the quality of our relationships. And we are in relationships all the time, in every corner of our lives, including the relationship we have with ourselves. Relationships are the infrastructure upon which we are trying to build everything else. But most of us have never learned how to do them well, let alone how to lead them consciously and relationally, especially when things get hard. Much of what we have learned not only doesn't work, it also can keep us stuck and unhappy. So this revolution that I'm talking about is a great global healing through the truth of love. It is a return from separation into wholeness, a paradigm shift in the way that humanity relates, loves, and leads, starting at the most intimate levels. I am here in these catalyst conversations, not just to give you insight, but to wake something up within you so that you may be part of this revolution too. Now, my guest today has been showing up for queer families for nearly 3 decades, not from the outside looking in, but from inside that journey herself. She is the founder of babyREADY, a birth worker, educator, parenting guide who has become one of the most trusted voices in the two-spirit LGBTQIA+ family creation genre. Her podcast, Becoming babyREADY, is in its 5th season, and her work was recently recognized by the LGBTQ nation as part of a remarkable group of women who have genuinely changed what it means for queer families to feel supported and seen. Sam, welcome to Catalyst Conversations for a Relationship Revolution. I am so glad that you are here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you again and have the chance to connect again.
Absolutely. So we are in Pride Month, and I want to start this conversation by asking you, like, what you see or feel right now in the queer family building community, because this political moment feels heavy. And so who we are and what we're trying to create in our life has a different temperature, a different tone than maybe it has in a long time. What are you finding in our community?
I'll be honest, this June feels less frightened than last June. And
That's good.
that isn't to suggest that the administration has improved. I don't think that it has. But I think when the administration first shifted at the beginning of 2025, and
Mhm.
so many organizations were closed down, people were put
Yeah.
out of work, all of the social setup, the federally funded social setup and framework within the United States, and I say this as a Canadian looking in, so please, I don't mean
Mhm.
to step out of my lane here. But the people that I've been speaking to have been saying to me when I was getting calls when the administration first changed, I had people reaching out to me asking about seriously asking me about migrating to Canada. What
Mhm.
should we do? How do we make sure that our children are going to continue to be our own? We have seen other countries. We've seen one country in Europe that has actually been removing parents from birth certificates and taking away their legal rights to the children
Wow.
that they've been parenting. And so when the administration changed, there were a lot of people who were terrified that that was coming for them.
Yeah.
And as yet, touch wood, that hasn't been something that
Mhm.
we've witnessed. I will touch as much wood as I possibly can to make sure that it stays that way, because with all of the other laws and things that have changed, it's almost a surprise that that hasn't been talked about yet.
Yeah.
But I do know that for the most part, parents are still doing that second parent adoption, even if where they live is particularly blue and they feel confident that they wouldn't have an issue. Don't take
Mhm.
those chances because I mean, I think everybody was blindsided by the results of that election. And
Yeah.
so we just don't know what the world is going to bring
Yeah.
to our houses, to our homes, to our families, to our
Mhm.
communities.
It's a whole nother layer as folks in our community are building their families or even thinking about creating their families to have to consider.
Mhm.
And you're right, even in places that feel safe right now, and even though we may still be, or we may be starting to feel safer, there's still
Right.
this level of anxiety, of fear, of the unknown
Yeah.
that adds to all of the other costs that come with creating family
Mhm.
within our relational identities.
Yes. Yes.
Well, so I want to get more into the work that you do and what you have seen and experienced in that cost. And I know that you also have a story yourself that brought you into this work. So, can you share what was your experience? What was the catalyst that brought you into becoming baby ready, and what did it forge within you?
It's not it's a story that's different than people probably assume when they first see me and learn about the work that I do. So, taking things all the way back, I had my first child 28 years ago. Believe it or not, I have a 28-year-old,
Wow.
um, and I had him just after as I finished university. I was a women's studies and poli sci student in university.
Mhm.
I grew up in a very small community. My parents owned their own business, and the common vernacular was be careful with everything you do. Someone's always watching. Make sure you're doing what you need to do to not embarrass the family. And it may not have been those exact words, although I feel as though that's exactly what I heard. That's
Mhm.
absolutely how I
Mhm.
interpreted it. So the girls that I dated all through high school, I did in secret. I knew by the time I was a teenager that I was queer, that I,
Mhm.
I, I liked girls, and I dated guys because that's what I was supposed to do. So if I wanted to have a relationship with somebody, it had to be a guy. Bearing
Mhm.
in mind that because someone in their mid 50s, the times were different than
Right.
hopefully they are for most people now.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to be a parent. And so I did what I needed to do to be able to make that happen for myself. And I talk to parents now and I hear them say that one of the biggest things that they had to reconcile with themselves when they knew they wanted to be a parent and then they came out to themselves before they
Mhm.
even said the words out loud to anybody else was, how am I going to achieve this goal? So between
Right.
wanting to become a parent, being in a space where I didn't feel like could safely come out, I did what I was supposed to. I married a man. I had two children. I left that relationship for a variety of reasons. It wasn't a safe space for me. Um,
Mm.
it was safe for my children. I will go to my grave reinforcing my ex is a fantastic parent, and that was what my children needed and deserved and needed.
Yeah.
Um, but I had children in a more traditional way, but I had a really crappy birth experience with my eldest child.
Mm.
I felt completely disempowered. I'd spent 10 weeks on bed rest. I had medical concerns. I spent 10 weeks on bed rest,
Wow.
and all the decisions were made for me. When, how, whether it was medicated, all of it was
Oh
decided
my
for
gosh.
me, up to the vacuum extraction and everything else. My
Yeah.
son was fine. Retrospectively, he's fine.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not the birth I wanted, and not, I didn't have the chance to just say, sure, I could do that if that was what the team felt was best for me. It was we will be doing this and then we will be doing that. So I came out of that birth, and about 5 months later, and I had kind of got my parenting feet wet because first child, I mean, anyone who's been there knows you're not
Mhm.
even, your head's not above water for at least 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think,
It's
and I
100
said,
days of darkness.
right, exactly. And I said, I need to do whatever I can to make birth a better experience for people. And as I started
Mhm.
saying that and looking around and talking to people, I realized that there was a word for that, that there had come to be a word for that, which was doula. I didn't
Uh-huh.
love the definition of doula per se, which is just a personal thing. So I fully respect, and I've gone back to using it because it's common vernacular. People know what a doula is,
Mhm.
and I do attend births. I've had the honor of attending the births of over 500 babies over the last almost 30 years. I've witnessed quite a few children come into this world.
Oh.
So I started changing it up, and I came home from that first birth. December 21st, 1998 was the first birth I attended as a doula. I mean, some
Mm.
things stay with you over the years, right?
Mhm.
And I said to my ex, "This is what I'm supposed to do with my life." And they looked at me and they were like, "How can you even know that? You've been to one birth." I said, I don't know. I just know.
Mhm.
And really, that's sort of been the impetus for moving me forward. And fast forward, I did my certification, childbirth education, adult education certificate through a local college and hospital. It was a concurrent program that they were offering.
Mhm.
And then I was hired by a hospital and was teaching classes for them 5, 6, 7 days a week. I worked for a local midwifery practice, and I just kept expanding my knowledge base. I loved learning. I loved taking in the new pieces of information and staying current. About
Mhm.
15 years ago, a friend of mine who worked with the midwifery practice in Mississauga, where I was working, uh, I had long since stopped working there, but we were chatting, and she said, "Do you do work specifically for members of the queer community?" And and I said, Not specifically. I mean, everyone's welcome in my classes." And
Mhm.
she knew, and at the time, my wife and I weren't married, but she knew that the woman that I was dating and living with was someone who had been in my prenatal classes. We didn't start dating right away when she was in my classes. I'll lay
Mhm.
that out there. We waited a few years for
Mhm.
that to happen, but so she knew that my classes must be open for anybody
Mhm.
to attend,
Yeah.
because that's how I
Yeah.
met my wife. And she said, "Well, why not? There's lots of people out there who can attend births and teach classes, but the queer community isn't being supported,
Mm.
and certainly not by members of their own community."
Yeah.
And there are now more and more doulas that I see in IBCLCs and all kinds of other professions surrounding the birth world that
Mhm.
do focus on the queer community and are staffed by members of the queer community. But it was it was just not a thing. And I said, "You're right. You called me out." And she has a habit of doing that. She does that to me all the
Mhm.
time, calls me out on things, and it makes me see a different perspective, and I needed it. And so I just kept continuing. I started taking certification and making sure I understood fertility tracking and helping people understand cycle monitoring and learning about what options were available to people in their family creation process, and
Mhm.
donations and gametes and implications counseling and all of the things that I've learned about. And I don't offer some of those services. I'm not a social worker. I don't offer
Mhm.
implications counseling, parenting guiding, being queer parents and trying to parent our children through teaching them their origin story and bringing that into the conversation. And there's so many elements of it that conversation with her has led me to where I am now. and
Mhm.
and my podcast is just an offshoot of all of those services that I offer, because people want to hear other people's stories. We don't
Yeah.
need a baby show where we buy diapers and onesies. We know where to do that. We need to
Mhm.
know how other people did it so we can help start to think about how we're going to do it for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so beautiful, Sam. And thank you for this work. For what you're saying, like the importance of stories, the importance of hearing how other people have done it. You're so right, because the dominant paradigm of how to create families isn't what queer families experience. Like,
Yes.
and some of them, like yourself, like some queer families are formed as blended families because they had children in previous relationships in,
Mhm.
kind of a heterosexual dynamic. But a lot of other queer families uh, don't that's not how they're approaching having
Mhm.
kids, and they don't know what the journey ahead is really gonna feel like, or what like, we don't know what we don't know, I guess is what I'm saying, right?
100%.
And so what do you find, like, are some of the big considerations and the big costs that folks in our community encounter in their family creation process that would be helpful, right, for anybody listening to this, whether they're an ally or approaching this dream themselves,
Mhm.
that they may not have been considering, that would feel really, like, helpful to enter into their paradigm?
That's a that's a a loaded
It's a big
question.
question.
It is a big question. And I think back to my wife's story, and I won't share too much of the details of her story because it's not my story to share. But my
Yeah.
stepdaughter's 20 years old, and it took 7 rounds of IUI, and all
Ooh.
told was less than $10,000 because it was 20 years ago. There's not a chance
Um,
that somebody would do 7 rounds of IUI now and have it
right.
cost only $10,000, and that's if
Right.
they knew the donor, right?
Yeah.
There's so so what is involved? The costs. I mean, I always feel more profoundly for the barriers in place just by biology of people who
Mhm.
were not assigned female at birth and therefore don't have a uterus to carry a child for themselves.
Yeah.
Because, in our relationship, if we were to have a child and when we were a couple, we would
Mhm.
have had the option of either one of us potentially carrying. And I fully respect, I have many clients and couples that I've worked with and talked to who knew from the very beginning, just because I have a uterus doesn't mean I want to use it. I have
Right.
zero
Right.
intent to carry.
Right.
But that said, the option is there, and that can
Mhm.
be a cost saving measure. Because, truth
Mhm.
be told, if I have a uterus and I have a friend who is willing to be a donor and sign away all legal rights, we write up our own things and sign
Yeah.
papers and say, no, no, nothing will come back to that person
Mhm.
in terms of financial cost or anything. They're just giving me gametes. I could do it in my bedroom and I'd be fine. And it wouldn't necessarily cost me literally anything, especially if I
Mhm.
know how to cycle track and things like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so it can be free. It
Mhm.
almost never is, but it can be free. But if you don't have the uterus, then you're at the mercy of someone who is going to not only harvest their eggs for you, but then again, someone who will carry a child for you. And that is a potential life risk that someone is taking. It
Yeah.
isn't common. We don't see huge numbers of people dying during the childbirth process anymore, thankfully.
Mhm.
But it isn't
Mhm.
that it's without risk every single time someone carries a baby. So
Yeah.
I feel for the people who don't have that because the costs for them are exorbitant. And I
Mhm.
have had on my show a number of times and have always have resources on my website for people to start your conversation with your financial planner and
Mhm.
just put little bits in at a time while you can. You don't even know if you want to have kids yet, put that
Yeah.
money aside because
Yeah.
it's not like you can't find a way to spend it later on, but
Mhm.
trying to find that money when you need it can be
Right.
that much more difficult.
Right.
Because these days, especially in the US, surrogacy journeys are often $250,000 for a child. A
Damn.
child. No,
Mhm.
and our children are worth it.
They
Every
are.
single parent I would talk to says I would spend 3 times, 10 times, 1,000 times that much to have the
Right.
family I have. They're
Right.
not taking away from that. But that's not chump change. People don't have
No.
that just sitting in
No.
their bank account waiting to be spent.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
they look at how can they cut corners or how can they save costs or where can they do it. It's beautiful when there are agencies that will put things together for you, but there's not a lot of agencies that aren't going to really cost a lot of money, and it's
Mhm.
so hard. It's
Mhm.
so hard.
Yeah. And if I could too, like, two things are coming up for me as you're talking, Sam. One is that, for folks who don't have access to the uterus, uh, in order to make children, um, there in other countries, and this is I just learned this because I was talking to a trans woman friend who lives in Germany. And in Germany, and apparently in a couple other countries in Europe, surrogacy isn't even legal.
Yes.
So like that doesn't even become an option for them at all. And even so far as, so my partner who's a trans man, he had his kids with his former wife through IVF, which again is a huge financial expense. But that in other countries is still considered surrogacy. So even for two people who have uteruses and are married, it would be illegal. And so, and I don't think, because this is something I didn't know, right? Even as a member of the queer community, but I don't think that everybody gets where these doors to access are and where they're closed for some people,
Mhm.
and then what it costs financially to access them when they're open, because it's, we don't have, like, we know in America anyways, or in the United States, that the medical system is expensive, but the idea of $250,000 to have a child is like, what? when when so many other couples get to just make babies by accident.
Yep.
um and the other thing I'll say too is you're speaking to the financial cost, and
Mhm.
that's only one aspect to think about, because even if you're
Absolutely.
like doing it for free, I have to imagine that there's still some layer of anxiety cost,
Mhm.
of like, what if they change their mind? What if the paperwork that we drafted has holes and won't stand up in court? What if
Mhm.
this person is involved in my kid's life and my child decides that they like their donor better than us? And right, like,
Yep.
I know that my former wife had a lot of those concerns about an anonymous donor.
Mhm.
um, right, and so there's this energetic and emotional cost of holding
Yes.
that unknown, that insecurity, those all of those what ifs. And then, of course, as we talked about when we started our conversation, you're adding in the layer of the cultural political climate that we're in, both in the United
Mhm.
States and elsewhere. And that's a different cost that we, folks in this community, carry with us, what even after we've had our children or brought children into the system.
Yeah. You're right, and it's, I think of some countries in Europe where it is illegal to, as you say, have a surrogate. So
Mhm.
those individuals start looking outside of their country, but it's still expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
often people will come to Canada because it's altruistic, which has its
Mhm.
own layers of complexity, good and bad. But they
Mhm.
have to pay to do that. But you
Yeah.
can't go to the bank for a loan for a
Right.
surrogate if surrogacy is illegal.
Right.
So you have to obtain that. So there's some. So now we're thinking about the emotional distress and cost of having to pack up and travel to another country to have our
Mhm.
child and
Mhm.
spend a length of time there
Yeah.
that's indeterminate, because I don't know
Mhm.
when the baby will be born. Will
Yep.
it be healthy? Will it need
Yep.
extra care? What
Yep.
is going to
Will the
happen?
will the will the surrogacy or the transfer even work?
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Like
So
that
there's so
that
many
part.
balls. Yeah, it's so many things in the air, and then as you say, does my legal paperwork hold up? Will,
Mhm.
you know what is with things like 23andMe and other DNA matching services that are available these days? Is
Right.
there anonymity? There's no such thing as anonymity. So our
Yeah.
children have the capacity to figure out who their donor is,
Mhm.
and we want to tell them their donor conceived. I don't know a queer parent out there who doesn't acknowledge that their
Yeah.
children deserve to understand donor conception stories and things like that.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a beauty that we have in our community, because we're part of the queer community. We're out and proud about all aspects of our lives,
Mhm.
perhaps, but the cishet community doesn't necessarily see it in a positive light. If they have to have reproductive assistance and use gametes from someone else, and so their donor conceived, that
Mhm.
tends to be seen as an embarrassment, and they hide that. But we celebrate it. Look at us. We have long since said to my stepdaughter, um, that all of the traits that she has had in her life that weren't our favorites, we just blamed it on the donor. And so we used the donor number that we have for the donor,
Yeah.
and just said, oh, that's blank, 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 blank's not fault, and you didn't get
Yeah.
that from us, you got that from them. um, but there is an emotional piece to it, and worrying about, will we depending on our relationship with our own parents and our own families,
Mm,
how is that impacted? Because parents always seem to want to become grandparents. And for some families, there's a lot of heat that they get from that. They're afraid to come out to their parents because they know
mhm,
their parents are going to be disappointed about grandkids or something else like
mhm,
that. So it's, there's all of these layers of cost to it. And that's just if we create children that are biologically connected to
mhm,
us. There's also the adoption
mhm.
process or the foster to adopt process and
Yeah.
the emotional toll that can be taken when you think a child is coming to be with you. A birthing person has said, yes, this is my family. This is where the child I'm birthing is going to go to. Oh, actually, I've changed my mind, or what have you. And I don't mean that is not throwing them under the bus. The decision to birth a child and give that child away that you've carried, that is just such a powerful and difficult process for them to
Yeah.
deal. Like
I
there's the
can
emotional
only
cost of
imagine.
that.
Mhm.
And then for the people who were planning to adopt that can't, or you're in a foster to adopt situation and the parents then decide they want their children back in their life, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
That's what we always want to see. At the
And
same time, the pain that comes from that. And I hear that all the time. People end up saying that they're going to spend the money on surrogacy or having a biologic child instead of adopting because they're terrified
yeah.
of that heartbreak that would come,
Mhm.
even if it's in the best interest of the child.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's so real.
Yeah.
I just wanna name too that even if they're courageous enough to pursue adoption,
Hmm.
in the United States anyways, there are still some states that where adopting a child as a queer or trans person is illegal,
Yeah.
right? So even adoption for all the kids that need homes and all the love that these families who want so much to be parents, right? These are not accidental parents. These are intentional
Hmm.
parents with a dream and a great big heart for raising a child with so much love, may not even be able to access that option
Yeah.
in certain places of this country, and I imagine that it's probably similar in other countries in the world as well. So
Hmm.
like it's just mind-boggling that not only is there just the barrier to how do we make this happen on
Yes.
a biological level? Like, how do we get access to the gamete that we need to
Yeah.
make this happen? But then there's also these other systemic barriers and financial barriers, uh, that that may come up for people depending just on where you live, let alone what kind of family support you have or what kind of like financial access that you
Hmm.
have as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
It is. It is.
Lot.
You know, I I had a guest on my show at one point. Her name's Dara Roth, and she has some credentialing in the US as well as in Canada. She's a social worker and she does implications counseling. And there's a lot of parents that I talk to who say, "Oh, I had to do implications counseling because they had a crappy counselor who just was ticking a box."
Mhm.
But one of the gifts that I find when you have a therapist like Dara is that, first of all, you see them at the beginning of your journey. You don't see
Mhm.
them when you've laid out a whole heap of money. Typically, you do it before you've even found a donor because you have to
Mhm.
talk to them about using donor gametes and things like that.
Mhm.
But you'll really break it down and provide a space for you to learn about how to feel what you're feeling and how to acknowledge what you're feeling and really process all of it. It's not just a form that she's filling out for them. For her, it's really about making sure that people feel supported and heard and have the resources at their fingertips that they
Mm.
need to be able to make the decisions they need to make, because it's
Mhm.
hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
It's so It's there's so many nuanced layers to all of it, and you get past one, and then somebody says, "Oh, okay, well then now we get to decide this." And you're like, "What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made the decision."
And now I have to figure this part out too? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, so for those who may not know or may not have ever heard the term, Sam, implications counseling, can you share a little bit about what that is and how someone might get that support if it's not already a part of like the process laid out before them?
So in Canada, and it is my understanding it is the same in the US. If you are planning to have a family and you're using donor gametes, so that's for cishet folk as well, if they
Mhm.
need to use donor gametes. I want to be clear, it's not just a queer
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
It is just more predominantly a queer thing
Yep.
because we don't have a choice but to
Yep.
use gametes from someone, a donor. We have to undergo at least one session of counseling with a therapist that is specifically licensed in implications counseling. So, talking
Mhm.
to us about what it means, good, bad, and otherwise, to use the gametes of someone that you are not biologically or romantically connected to.
Mhm.
And so, the possibility is there that you really get a great counselor who really shows you the whole picture and is able to ask questions of you in such a way that it helps unlock the questions that you had in your mind that you didn't even know that you had, and helps provide a framework for you from which to get the information you need to feel safe and secure
Mhm.
to continue to go for more therapy as you process becoming a parent. It's a huge transition in our lives, and it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for a second. But had somebody said to me, almost 30 years ago, if you're thinking about having a child, maybe sitting down and talking to somebody about all the different ways in your life you're going to be affected by parenting, I think I would have welcomed that, because maybe I'd have had different strategies in place. And
Mhm.
I think I managed pretty well. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I think we can't underplay how valuable things like that can be. And if you're going through an agency to be uh, to for egg retrieval and fertilization, or for IVF and transfer, you have to have that box ticked, and so you
Mm.
have to have done your implications counseling. But I would interview people. That's what I would say to people. If you have to go for implications counseling and you get a name from somebody, interview them, call them and interview them. Get a sense of what they're like. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be a long call. Most of them are pretty, if they're good at their job, most of them are like, nope, hey, I'll give you 5 minutes and you can get a sense of my
Mhm.
perspective and
Mhm.
get the support you need and deserve, because you'll be glad you had it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that brings me to one of the other questions I wanted to ask you. So your work has kind of, my understanding anyways, has been created in such a way that it walks with families from the
Yes.
start of their planning journey all the way through their early parenting experiences.
Yes.
And that is huge. And so like, can you talk a little bit about what changes for a family when they have that level of support? Why is that so important to get that kind of support? Not just this like one session with a really great implications counselor, but someone who can really walk that path with you.
And this is me tooting my own horn, but but that's what I'm here to do. So
Yeah,
we'll
yes.
jump into it.
And well deserved. And
Thank
also
you.
real. Like it's tooting your own
Yes.
horn and this is truth.
Yes. And I think that that's part of it too,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to the queer community. As you say, we don't get pregnant with by accident. We don't get pregnant without someone else. So, but bringing someone like myself in means that you have this constant all through the process, because I'm not
Mhm.
just the face of your family doc ordering the initial blood work, and I'm not the intake person at the fertility clinic and the reproductive endocrinologist and the sonographer and the OB and the
Yeah.
I'm consistent all the way through,
Yeah.
so that when questions come up, we've built a relationship from the very beginning. and they
Mhm.
know that they can ask me about anything and I'll give them more information. And if I don't have that, if
Mhm.
somehow they've asked me a question I've never been asked before, I'm very confident that I know where to find the answer to that question. And it can also help them break down the microaggressions that come up. I do a talk, and I'm doing another one just this week with healthcare providers about supporting the queer community and
Amazing.
understanding the trauma, the lived trauma that
Yeah.
many of us have experienced at the hands of people in positions of authority, whether they're
Yes.
questioning our ability to understand what our sexuality is, whether they don't believe in our sexuality and don't want to
Mhm.
treat us because we're part of the queer community, whether they just don't have the vocabulary to talk about something other than moms and dads, and they just can't
Mhm.
expand beyond the very basics. Um, that being that constant for them so that they have someone that they can work through those micro so that they don't pile up, right? The problem with microaggressions is that they're micro for only a short period of time and then they become
Mhm.
macro and they
Mhm.
explode all over everything. And we're
Yeah.
having a breakdown and we don't know why we're having a breakdown, but we just can't be called, where's your husband again? Or, like
Ugh.
we just can't do that
Right.
one more time. Right.
Right.
And so I think that's where I feel from my clients and what they say to me that they find so vitally valuable is just that
Mhm.
constant through the whole journey until they feel that they've got their parenting legs. And I support them through the first little while of parenting. And then they're, essentially released and we don't talk as often, but I still get the emails. I still get the phone calls. I
Mhm.
still get the one offs. Can I book an hour so we can just talk through this is what's happening in our life now? Or this,
Beautiful.
our kids getting ready to go to school. How do I make myself ready for the questions that are going to come up? Or, how do I fill out the forms at the school and make sure our child feels supported going into this environment too? So it's
Mhm.
ongoing, right? And because it can
Mhm.
feel so isolating sometimes, especially if you're not living in a queer bubble.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And there's something so settling for our nervous systems to know that we've got someone in our corner who gets it,
Yes.
right? Like, we can't change the world. We can't necessarily fix the medical system or ensure that those microaggressions are not gonna show up in our life. The best we can do is navigate them, cope with
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
right? And with all of the other costs of trying to build a family, trying to create a family, trying to then be a parent,
Yes.
especially when you're a new parent, like the energetic expenditure I in a system, like systemically in a system that doesn't support who we are, the family we're trying to build, to have someone that just one person who
Mhm.
really gets it and you can rely on to be there for you and support you through the mess in your head or the mess in your home,
Mhm.
it's like it's game changing.
It is.
It can be life saving.
Mhm.
And I truly believe, I don't know about you, Sam, but I truly believe when we're in and when we are trying to create life as someone with a uterus or even as someone who is borrowing another person's uterus, there's an energetic component. There's a spiritual piece of
Mhm.
almost safety that I think is really supportive to inviting this new
Mhm.
life into ours. And
Mhm.
if we're not feeling safe, if we're feeling overwhelmed, if we're feeling stress, my theory, and I don't have any like data to prove this, but my
Right.
theory is that it makes it more difficult to get there, to conceive, to um, see things unfold or work out
Mhm.
in the direction we want them to. 'Cause
Yeah.
yeah, because there's something about, like, just being that safe container
Mhm.
for this new life, this child to become a part of your family. And I
It,
think that like the
and
work
you
that
hear
you
people
do that you're
talk about
talking
that
about,
though, right?
right.
You you hear people talk about that. You hear people say, I no, it's I hear it more with the cis het community because
Mm,
they try and try and try and they aren't successful and they go through rounds and rounds of IVF and they're not successful. They finally say that they're not going to try anymore, and that's when they conceive. And
mhm.
you know the challenge is with the queer community, we don't have the opportunity to let down our guard and just
Right.
try without trying,
Yeah.
because we have to do it in a medical setting. We have to do, even if we're using a turkey baster in our bedroom at home
Mhm.
with a donor in the next room putting it in a cup for us.
Mhm.
That is still clinical. That is still not
Yeah.
making love to a partner and
Right.
creating a baby through the process. Even if you're kissing and you're making love and you're connecting and you're building to orgasm and all the other things, you are still releasing the turkey baster. It is not it is still,
There's no getting around
there's
it.
still that no, that's just it. There's no accidents that are happening. You're not going to wake up surprised that you're pregnant because
Mhm.
you were there. You knew that it was happening. And so
Mm,
cortisol, I think, plays a huge role in all of it.
yeah.
And so you're right. I think the challenge becomes how do we minimize our stresses? It's not alone the issue.
Mhm.
Lots of people have
Yeah.
other
No,
physiologic things that come up.
agreed.
And I'm certainly not taking away from that. However, that is a piece. And so if I can give them that assuredness that they need to have someone to be there to handhold metaphorically or physically through the
Mhm.
journey, so that they can feel that they can let some of that go, that's not something they have to carry because I'll carry it for them,
Yeah.
then hopefully that helps make it a more successful process for them.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, such important work, and so clear that you like you get it. You're immersed in it. Not only do you have the education and credentials to back it, but like you live in this space and you have worked with so many people and supported them and heard so many stories that the resources that you can offer, even just as a resource, just
Mm-hmm.
as like listening to your podcast, right,
Mm-hmm.
is really such a gift to the world, such a gift to our community. And I want to thank you so much,
Mm-hmm.
Sam, for being in this work and offering like this support for one of the biggest and in my opinion sometimes like scariest, hardest, most costly dreams that we in the LGBTQ community might hold for ourselves. I know it certainly was for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Um, and if anybody wants to hear my story of conception, find my episode on Sam's podcast because we go deep into how I created my family, and it was a really
Absolutely.
great conversation. She's got
It
lots of them.
was.
So there's so much here that we could dig deeper into, but I know that we are already at time.
Mm-hmm.
Before I let you go, though, a couple of things. First, if you could leave our listeners with one message, like one thing you most want them to hear or remember, what would that be?
You matter, and your journey matters. And so give yourself the opportunity to believe that you are as entitled to become a parent as anyone
Mm,
else on the planet. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Don't let anyone take your dreams. If you're having trouble figuring out how you're going to make it happen, give yourself permission to grieve that it isn't going to be easy, because I think that we're afraid to grieve. And it can be a grief filled process in different times, whether it's, the embryo didn't take, whether we didn't, it was a failed transfer, whatever, a
mhm.
miscarriage, adoption rescinded, all kinds of different grieving processes can come up. And just give yourself permission to feel all the things along the way, but you
Mhm.
matter, and how you feel about the journey matters.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. for sharing that. I hope that all of you who are listening, whether you're part of this community or not, can hear that and receive that, because it is 100% true. And Sam, if there's a woman listening who resonates with what you're saying, wants to learn more about your resources or even work with you, how can they find you? How can they get in touch?
The easiest way is my website. My podcast, you can find links to through my website. You can scroll back through the episodes. What I should have done before you and I started talking tonight is written down the date and time and episode number of the podcast that you were on.
Yeah.
But you were an early one for me.
Right.
But my website is babyready.info. If you want to get an opportunity to catch snippets of some of the thoughts I have, some of the work that I do, some of the feelings that I share, I'm also all over social media
Mhm.
at babyREADY LGBTQ. And I think my LinkedIn is Sam Leeson Baby Ready or something like that. So I'm everywhere all at once.
Excellent. And we will make sure to put those links in the show notes. And I believe you have a free resource for our listeners at babyready.info. Can you tell us what they'll find there, what they can access?
The resources are kind of abundant. People let me know what they want, and
Oh,
I can
good.
provide that. So I have resources, free
Amazing.
resources that I share about sibling preparation. If you're having your second or subsequent baby and you want some ideas on how to make the transition as smooth as possible for your existing child, that's one.
Mhm.
I do free 15-minute consultations with people so that they have the opportunity to get a chance to tell me what they're looking for support for. I
Mhm.
also have a resources page full of resources and things that people have access
Amazing.
to for everything, whether they're looking for fertility support or um, lactation support or whatever. It's all there. It's all
That's
there.
awesome. Awesome. What a great resource.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sam, for being here and for this powerful and important conversation. Really appreciate it. So good to see you again and to
Yes.
hear the way that your work continues to reach more and more people. I love that you are talking to providers now. Like, that is also such important advocacy work, and game changing for we who are so often misunderstood, or again, like you but different from you in your birthing experience,
Mhm.
unseen in
Yes.
our experience and who we are
Yeah.
and what we need and what's been our reality. So the work you're doing is so needed in the world, and I'm really
Thank
grateful
you.
that you came and shared your time with us here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm going to put you backstage for now and wrap up our episode. My friends, if this episode meant something to you, if you received value here, and I can't imagine that you didn't, if you felt seen in this conversation, will you do something for us right now? Will you subscribe to the Relationship Revolutionary podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a review? Share this episode with one woman who you think may need to hear it today, because your word of mouth, your support in this way helps get this conversation into rooms that Sam and I couldn't otherwise bring it to. If you want to help me to activate and accelerate this global movement, this relational revolution, make sure that you stay engaged with all the work that I do. Like, comment, subscribe to us on YouTube, share about our work, attend our events, connect with me on social, and of course, do your part to continue to lead your relationships with love. If you're looking for support for yourself, please reach out. There are a number of ways that Cal and I could support you in your relationship journey. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about two of the ways that I could support you right now. First, I want to invite you to something that's completely free and that I believe is really, really paradigm shifting and door opening for the changes that you've been looking for in your relationship. It's a free masterclass that I'm hosting, and it's called How to Get Your Partner to Finally Show Up the Way You've Been Asking Without Burning Out Trying to Make It Happen. And I don't care that the title's long. I think every word is doing an important job. It's so this masterclass, not a webinar, not a tips session. We're going to engage, we're going to activate. And you're going to leave with a real shift in your understanding of how you can own your power, move your relationship forward, regardless of what your partner is or is not doing. So if you have been efforting, asking, explaining, advocating, trying everything that you know how to try and still not getting the partnership that you deserve, that you know is possible, then this masterclass was made for you. The link to register for the next masterclass is in the description. I hope to see you there. If you know that you are ready for something more and deeper, let me tell you about a brand new program that I launched just in May, so last month. It is called The Third Path. This is a 6-week program for the woman who wants to stay in her relationship and change everything. It is the path between staying stuck and struggling and leaving and having to start over. This is the way that you can actively change your relationship, not by waiting for your partner to change first, but by learning how to stay in your sovereignty, in your voice, in your power, and approach your relationship consciously, effectively, and with less energy and effort than anything you've been putting out there so far, right? This is the third path, is like the extension of the masterclass, where we go from like what you can do into the depths of how to do it. And I support you over the 6 ways in order to do it. So the third path is normally $2,222 a month. And for this month in June, if you identify as a member of the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus community, you can access the full 6-week program for just $555. You just use the coupon code PRIDE555 at checkout. The offer is for June only. The link is in the description. I'm going to take you at your word that you belong and that you're a member of our community. This is my give back to reducing the barriers to the support that we all need. I know $555 can still be a significant investment for folks, but like Sam said, for those who have spent $250,000 to bring the baby into their world, spending $555, if it means that your relationship, your marriage lasts and becomes easier and happier and healthier than ever before, and you actually start getting the dynamic, the joy, the fulfillment that you know you deserve, it's going to be worth that $555. So know that you deserve all of the love. And I echo what Sam said, that you matter. Your needs, your experiences, your dreams, they matter. And you deserve someone who gets it and sees you and can walk with you in creation of all of the dreams. So let's build something beautiful together for your life. Links to these are in the description. That's all I have for you today, my dear ones. I hope that you will join me for another Catalyst conversation in the relationship revolution. We are going to continue our Pride series this month. There will be a new episode dropping next Friday at 12:30, as all episodes do. Until then, keep leading with love.